Hi boys and girls, I hope you're keeping well. Today we're going to have a story called The Big Concrete Lorry, written by Shirley Hughes, and Shirley Hughes did the pictures as well. Now let's have a look inside, will we? Oh, what do you think that is? It's a cement mixer, isn't it? Big orange one. Again. The Patterson family lived at number 26 Trotter Street. There was Mum and Dad and Josie and Harvey and little Pete and also Murdoch, their dog. Their house had a patch of garden at the back with a flower bed, a washing line and an apple tree. And in front of it there was only just room between the house and the street for some flower pots and a couple of dustbins. There's Murdoch the dog, isn't sitting on the doorstep. That looks like quite a nice big garden, doesn't it? Josie had a room of her own. It was jam-packed with all her things. She's got lots of bits and pieces in that room, hasn't she? Looks like she's got, I can see a little pig there, and lots of ponies, and a pink hat. Here's a teddy, and lots of shoes and skates. Harvey and little Pete shared the back bedroom. It was jam-packed with their things. Murdoch, the dog, had a basket in the kitchen, but often, though he wasn't supposed to, he slept at the bottom of Harvey's bed. Murdoch was a roly-poly dog who fitted nicely under Harvey's feet, like a plump hot water bottle. That's funny, isn't it? Murdoch reminds me of Taffy a little bit. What's this here? Oh, look, it's a picture of a knight in shining armour, isn't it? Wow, that's cool. And bird pictures. They got like a garage thing for their cars. There's a horse and carriage, a teddy. Lots of nice pictures they've been doing as well. The Pattersons' hall was full of coats and books and skateboards and buggies. The family living room was very often full of Pattersons. Sometimes when Josie was doing her homework at one end of the table and Mummy was cutting out a blouse at the other end and Daddy was eating his supper in front of the television and little Pete was playing with his toy cars and Harvey and Murdoch were flopping about all over the sofa, it seemed as though the room was so full it would burst. "We must have more space," moaned Mum. "We could move to a bigger house," said Dad, "if only big houses weren't so expensive." All the family said that they couldn't possibly move to a new house. They loved Trotter Street, where they lived, far too much. And then Daddy had a good idea. "We could build an extension," he cried. Harvey wanted to know what an extension was. Daddy explained that it was an extra room at the back, just like the one that Mr. Lyle had built next door. Mr. Lyle's extension was full of beautiful pot plants and ornaments. All the Pattersons thought that to have an extension like Mr. Lyle's would be a very good idea. So Dad brought home some brochures showing pictures of splendid extensions with happy-looking people inside them. Those are the brochures. Brochures are kind of like magazines. "Oh, I'll put it up myself," said Daddy. "Are you sure you can manage that?" Mum asked anxiously. Dad said that Mr. Lal and his son Rajit and Frankie and May's dad from up the street had promised to help him, so it'd be all right. The next week a delivery van drew up outside the Pattersons' house and some men unloaded bits of wood and windows and doors and stacked them in the back garden. This was the extension, all in different pieces. "Now we need some bricks," said Dad. A few days later another truck arrived. It had Jiffy Building Company written on it, and underneath Joe and Jimmy Best. "Load of bricks you ordered," said Jolly Joe Best, jumping down from the cab. And then he and Jimmy lowered the flap at the back of the truck and began unloading the bricks. They took them through the house and stacked them in the garden. After they'd driven off, Harvey, Josie and Little Pete had a great time playing on the bricks while Mum vacuumed away all the dirty footprints left by Joe and Jimmy. Oh look, they're having so much fun stepping and climbing up on the bricks. The following morning, Daddy got up very early and put on his old trousers, saying that he was going to dig a foundation. Of course, Harvey wanted to know what a foundation was. Dad explained that it was a solid base for the extension walls to stand on. Mr. Lal came round after breakfast and helped Daddy to measure the space for the extension. They marked it out carefully with string pegged to the ground. Then Dad, Mr. Lal and Rajit and Frankie and May's dad began to dig a trench following the line of the string. So here's the pegs and this is the string. So they're digging along beside the string so they know that they've got the right measurement for the extension. They're not going to make it any smaller than the string and they're not going to make it longer than the string. It has to be just the right length. Little Pete thought all this was very interesting. He fetched his spade and began to dig too, and so did Murdoch the dog. When the trench was finished, the men cleared the space where the floor was to be. They put down the bits of brick and rubble and covered them with a plastic sheet. Now everything was ready for the concrete, but first an inspector came to look at it to make sure it had all been done properly. Meanwhile, Josie and Harvey pretended that the extension was already built and they were having lunch inside. Josie imagined that it had pink wallpaper and Harvey imagined that there were curtains with a pattern of aeroplanes on it. Daddy was so tired the next day that he didn't get up early. Mum took him up a cup of tea in bed. And while the rest of the family were having breakfast, they heard a great noise in the street. They all hurried outside. A lorry had arrived at their house. It was huge. It had a big drum that turned slowly round and round. And on the side of the lorry was written, Jiffy Ready Mix Concrete Company. Out jumped Jolly Joe Best. "Load of concrete you ordered," he called cheerfully. "Not this morning, surely," said Mum. "I'm sure we didn't." But it was too late. Jimmy had already pulled a lever and the big drum poured out a load of concrete, all in a rush. Slop, slurp, dollop, splash. Just like that, it landed in a quivering heap right outside the Pattersons' front door. Oh dear. Dad rushed downstairs, pulling on his trousers over his pyjamas. "Oh, we weren't expecting you to come today," he shouted. "That's okay, just sign here," said Joe, and then he leapt back into his seat. "It's quick setting," he called from the cab window. "That'll be as hard as a rock in a couple of hours. You better get busy." "But we haven't..." called Dad. But Jimmy was already revving up the engine and the big concrete lorry roared away up the street in a cloud of dust. Oh, goodness me. "Quick!" cried Dad, picking up a shovel. "Quick!" shrieked Mum, searching for a spade. "Grab those buckets! Fetch the wheelbarrow! Run for the neighbours! The quick setting concrete is soon going to set!" Set means the concrete's going to get hard really quickly, so they have to move it to where they want it really quickly before it goes hard. Never had the Pattersons moved so fast. Mum began to shovel up the concrete into the wheelbarrow and trundle it through the house, while Dad shoveled and smoothed it down over the foundation at the back. Josie and Harvey ran to fetch Mr. Lal and Rajit from next door, and Frankie and May's dad from up the street. and they all came running as fast as they could. The neighbours pitched in and shovelled and spread too. Josie, Harvey and Little Pete ran up and down with buckets. Murdoch joined in, barking loudly. Everyone laboured and struggled and fell over one another's feet. They shovelled and heaved and trundled concrete from the front of the house to the back, and steadily the heap on the pavement grew smaller and smaller. "Quick, it's beginning to set," shouted Mum. Everybody worked faster and faster. "Oh, done at last," gasped Dad, throwing down his shovel and wiping his hands on his trousers. Then all the workers rested. The foundation was finished. Only a little hill of concrete was left beside the front door. It had set so hard that nothing in the world would shift it. The extension went up bit by bit after that. First a low brick wall, then the roof and windows and doors, and at last the Patterson family were able to move in. That looks lovely, doesn't it? Look at that lovely room they've built. And look, it has got the aeroplane curtains and the pink painted walls. That looks like a lovely new room, doesn't it? They were so pleased with their beautiful new extension that they gave a party for all their neighbours. That was a kind thing to do, wasn't it? Harvey and Little Pete were extra pleased with the small concrete hill which stood outside their front door. None of their friends had a hill like that one outside their house. It was great for sitting on and for racing their cars down. And if you climbed up and stood on the very top of the little hill, you could see right to the very end of Trotter Street. How about that? I'd quite like a little concrete hill. That would be fun to stand on, wouldn't it? And you could race cars down it and run down it really quickly and do fun things like that, couldn't you? They look like they're having great fun with that. What a lovely story. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to another story tomorrow. Bye bye, boys and girls.